Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Joanna Daniel. Today I'm talking about a really important subject of breaking generational patterns. And so you might see me look down on my notes sometimes because I think it's a really important subject and I really want to do it justice. So sometimes, I made myself notes. So what is it that we need to do to break generational patterns? What are the things that we need to do in order to break anything? I believe in order to break anything, we need to first find out the root of it. What's the root of the problem that we're breaking? Where did it start? And when we find out what the root is, then we can begin to attack the problem, because sometimes we're dealing with the fruits as opposed to the root, and the pattern's not going. So for example, some of the root of trauma might be things like self-esteem. And so you might spend a lot of time working on your self-esteem, and that's not the root of the issue. The root of the issue might be the trauma, the generational things that exist that's been repeating for generations, the things that has been coming down through the line, and you're working on your self-esteem. And while that's not bad work, that's good work. Working on our self-esteem is good because we want to be good, healthy people, because when our self-esteem is intact, then the impact is throughout our lives. It impacts how we show up in work, how we show up in our relationships, just how we function. So that's important. But our self-esteem and our self-worth, and sometimes that's not the root of the work. Even depression might be a fruit of the generational trauma. Anxiety might be a fruit of generational trauma, as opposed to the root of it, right? So finding what that root is really important. Sometimes finding where it starts is important. And I think oftentimes when we have a physical health issue in our families, we want to find out, well, where did that start? When we want to find out where it starts, we want to find out who had it first. And when we find out that, then we know how to begin to treat, right? So it's important just as much with generational trauma to find out where did that start as well, right? So we want to go to the root to find out. So what are some of the ways that we can begin to address this crucial issue? We need honesty and openness. Openness and honesty. Now, depending on your family, you might not be open. I know that many people have asked, who is my father? And they're told to mind their business. I think that's a really important thing to know, because who is my father is a who am I question. And you might have that question. Who am I? Who are my family? Where are they? What do they look like? Is there anything that in that family that I need to know? So, but they're families where this is a secret, and many people in the family will know the answer to the question and refuse to share. You might be in the situation where you're trying to heal, you're trying to you're working through identity and try to figure out who you are without having a template, because they're refusing to share that information. And I understand how that might be painful. I understand how that might be really hard. So it's important to know. So honesty and openness. Now, if you can't get honesty and openness from the people above, like, your parents and your grandparents, if your aunties and uncles and, people that are older in your family, if they are not prepared to be honest and open, then the honesty and openness with yourself is important. Be open with yourself. Be honest with yourself. Tell yourself that this is hard. This is difficult. This is an issue for me. This is how it's affected me. So that's honesty with yourself is really going to be crucial, because when you can be honest with yourself and be honest with the pain and the depth of it and the impact of it, then you can take that to therapy. You can get work. You can buy the books. You can go to the retreats. You can start to do the work with it. So the honesty, the openness with yourself is important. I know sometimes people feel like if they're being honest with themselves, that means that they are disloyal to their family. And maybe loyalty is a big thing in your family. The loyalty of what happens in this family stays in this family might really be meaningful to you. We never share anything about our family anywhere. And so going to therapy to talk about generational trauma that you have identified might feel like you're not being loyal. And you might get ostracized by other members of your community because you're beginning to address something that is really important. But, when you do that, when you address that really important thing, you are sending a message, both sides of you, of yourselves, up and down. That the people that are younger than you are looking at as an example of what it looks like to heal and to do things differently. And they're knowing that we can do things differently. Now we can make different choices. That this is an option. Otherwise they don't know that it's an option. And I'm not for one moment minimizing the amount of work that will take when you're the only one trying to do something different. I know it's hard, it's very difficult, but you can do it with support. And I have witnessed over time and time again, repeatedly, the number of people that have done it, that have done the hard work of being open and honest, and the power of vulnerability in a space that is safe, and the magnitude of the work that results from that. You are worth that work of freedom. Communicating is important. Communicating to people who are safe, communicating sometimes to your family about what you're doing. You might not be able to be, it might not be safe enough to communicate, but where it is, just to share what you're doing. So how do you know what to tackle? And I talked about the root, but how do you know? How are you going to identify the root? You might be listening and say, well, Joanna, I don't know what the root is. I don't know what my family trauma is. I don't know the generational cycles that are going around. I just know that we are a dysfunctional family. Things are not going well. What do I do? Observe, pay attention, listen. You will see it. It will show up in patterns. What I mean by that, things that are repeating, behaviors that repeat in your family might show up. So lack of boundaries might be a pattern in your family. Nobody respects anybody. People talk to anybody anyhow in my family. There's lots of shouting and arguing. That's a pattern. Look, where else does it exist? Which other family is it showing up in? Which other cousin's home is it in? There might be a lack of safety, physical safety, emotional safety that is repeating, that is spread out across the family. There might be conflict avoidance in the family. Nobody talks about anything. There's this big elephant. Everybody's ignoring it. And so it carries on. There might be conflict. Your family might be harsh and judgmental and critical, and people argue and fight and ignore issues. There might be that too. What are the patterns that are showing in your family? There might be some behavior management issues. People are not intelligent to their emotions, and they don't understand and they don't listen. There might be problems with finances. Look at what's repeating across your family, what's coming down from who's older, what's spread out across aunties and uncles and cousins. Look at the things that are repeating and look how it's showing up in your own life. How is what you're seeing repeating across the family showing up in your own life, and how is it impacting you? And when you sit with that impact, you can find somebody to sit with that with and begin the hard work of beginning to change your pattern and how you respond. And you'll begin to see that other people start to change how they respond to you too. Because when there's a pattern, everybody has a role. If you change your role in that pattern, everybody has to change how they respond to you. Sometimes you have to step outside of the group. Now, that might be lonely. That might be scary, frightening, sad. But sometimes you have to step outside of the group, outside of the circle, to do the very necessary work of healing generational trauma. Of course, this is not exhaustive. There are many ways that we can approach the subject, and we can't deal with it in its entirety in a 10-minute video. However, throughout the course of next week, I'm going to talk about other ways generational trauma impacts us and some of the really subtle ways that it shows up and what we can do to begin to heal. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and share this video with who you think might benefit. Take care.